Thank you.
Thank you, Jordana. As she mentioned, my name is Edward Hertzman. I'm founder and president of Sourcing Journal and Rivet. So today we are going to dig into innovations in the sustainable textile space. So why don't we just get right into it? There's obviously so many innovations that everyone is talking about. You know, we read about pineapple and algae, but the question really is, at a fiber level, what has the potential to be scaled up and used in a meaningful way? David, you wanna start off?
Yeah, I think Bolt Threads is its own interesting story. We started very focused on recombinant proteins and how to use inspiration from silk proteins as to how to make a spider silk fiber. Now that's a technical challenge that people have talked for a long time about. You see a lot of fanfare, you know, your next bulletproof vest, your next apparel is going to be made with spider silk. And we found the story so compelling, and we had the technology to solve the problem, as well as we were very motivated and determined by making biodegradable alternatives to some plastic fibers. But in the end, even though we're able to solve a lot of the technological challenges, and the industry has been very interested and sort of, we say internally, are fibers curious, the ability to hit scale fast enough and the cost basis for recombinant protein fiber is a real challenge. It forces it into very niche spaces, and it is not necessarily the solution to sustainability that we had when we were, 10 years ago had really anticipated. We think there are much better ways of pursuing the quote unquote spider silk problem to make sustainable materials for apparel. And really, we found that almost all the demand for new material for us was with leather. And this is, where our Milo offering, which is a mycelium-based leather, everybody was asking us, like, micro silk is cool, but do you have a leather offering? Do you have a leather offering? And I think when we address that problem, the issues of leather and the greenhouse gas usage and the livestock issues, animal agriculture, there might be a shift for a more focused shift towards what are the most scalable solutions to fibers right now. But our own exploration over all this time has just been, it's very unclear what a lot of different sectors of the industry want out of a sustainable fiber. So we haven't been able to quite figure out how to address it in the most impactful way.
Mm-hmm. So Jordan, you're one of the most candid and vocal thought leaders when it comes to sustainability, especially around fiber innovation. What's your thoughts on this?
It is interesting when new developments come out. I think one of the most difficult parts of sustainability is how you communicate it to your consumers. One of the things right now I think that I'm starting to realize is no matter how vocal I think I am, because I know that I'm doing things and I know that I'm doing it regular, oftentimes you have people that maybe are following you but can't see everything. And coming from Reformation as well, they did some of the most profound, guidelines for fashion that I had seen with any other companies. However, one of the first questions I would always get when I would tell people I work for Reformation, they would say, is it really sustainable? And that's why, even though it seems kind of redundant to be like, well, can't we just, do action without having to tell everybody that we're doing everything good? And that is difficult because it is, it is like what was previously said, that it is more expensive. And people need to understand that to have innovation requires, costs that need to be put into innovation. And this takes time for it to scale to an appropriate level where it's profitable. And with that, you have to market, you have to communicate to your customers to let them understand the reasons why this is more expensive and the benefits of it. Therefore, it creates a more value. And with more value, people appreciate the product more. And that's something that fashion's missing right now with fast fashion coming in so strong. They devalued fashion. They made it feel like you can wear it once and throw it away like your coffee cup. And that is changing even there with coffee cups. People are buying more and more because they're realizing the value of a coffee cup and having it be reusable and the impact on the environment. So it takes this bit of educational marketing as well as transparency behind their true costs of producing these products. And not only that, the true labor that goes behind it, and the love and passion of creating that innovation.
So you brought up the consumer, which is an interesting perspective. You know, sustainable fashion does come with a cost. You know, people like to argue it, but it is in fact more expensive. You know, we are facing still in the midst of a global crisis, pandemic, economic crisis. And if you look at Gen Z, millennials, probably Gen Z more, has probably been the most sustainable generation yet. But they're going to be entering a jobless workforce, or they're going to really feel the burden of a lot of what's going on right now. So with all that being said, you know, what does this mean for the future of sustainability? Do you think consumers are still going to demand it, and will they be able to afford it, or is it going to take a step back in the short term? James, what are your thoughts?
Look, I think I think there's a little bit of proof in the pudding already. You know, we've seen that our sales are increasing, although we lost all our wholesale sales overnight with the shutdowns and lockdowns. Our online sales have just increased rapidly, and the reason for that, I believe, is that you know, more and more as we face uncertainty in the world, we become more careful and considered with how we spend our money, and therefore, when we're seeing the environmental degradation around the world, which the media is exposing to us, and we're becoming more and more aware of it, we make a really simple decision. Do we want to be a part of the solution or a part of the problem? And most people are good, and most people want to be a part of the solution. And so when we're able to offer them a solution which is tangible and easy, and like Jordan has said, when we communicate that clearly so that our customers know exactly what it is they're buying, I think they buy in. And as far as you know, entering a jobless workforce, you know, I'm quite optimistic about what's going to happen. I think it's times like this that we do innovate, and we do come up with new ways of being able to address some of these massive global issues. And so therefore, I think the opportunity is only growing larger for brands that are actually doing the right thing. I think the problem that we do face, though, is there's a lot of greenwashing in the space, and consumers are hearing lots of talk around lots of, we want to call it sustainability elements. And really, it's just a very small part of what a brand is doing. And so I think that's the challenge that we would face, is that communicating that story. We say that you can't have a sustainable collection and then claim to be a sustainable brand. You know, it's all or nothing, in my opinion. And so I think that that's probably one of the greatest challenges that we need to face in addressing educating our customers.
Bert, what's your take?
I'm happy to be here because a lot of like-minded people. A lot have been said already. We always say that with every dollar you spend, you vote. It's a vote. You say, like, I give you this money, and I think you do the right thing with it, so I trust you. So it's all a matter of trust, and that's hard to explain many times, because and we also have trouble finding our message, because we do so many things that it's hard to explain to the consumer. You try to wash better, you try to use better dye stuff, you try to use organic, everything, and the whole message. If I start talking about our jeans, you'll be with me for 20 minutes and your attention is gone. So you have to find your point where you can hit really your consumers, and we do that with recycling. We like to get our old jeans back and recycle that, and we think that's important because proof is that, you know, it's one of the best way to be more sustainable. And it's a lot of fun also. So we try to also make it fun for the consumer. We like very much the good is the new cool model. We have markets in Europe like Switzerland where it's really cool to wear something good and you want to talk about it. So it's moving forward. When we started 8 years ago, it was not very interesting. Like 12% of the population would say, okay, I'll try to buy something more sustainable. Today it's 36% in Germany. And that's a lot. That's a big market. So do we want to try to find the mass market, all those other people, or are we focusing on those 36% that are already in and try to reach them and try to be better? There's lots to say, and there's, like Jordan said, there's a lot of greenwashing happening, which hurts us a lot, because we are on Zalando now, for instance, and it has this little button saying Nachhaltigkeit. In German, that means sustainability. And if I keep going and I see my jeans and then under it, you also like, and I see a lot of brands that might use a little bit of BCI cotton, and that's all, then I go like, I don't want to be in this list. So it's hard for us. We're a small company. We're trying to get the message out. There's a lot of things changed also. A lot of techniques are coming up, and we use them. and it's going the right way, but we need more power. We need to combine all our efforts and see if we can reach the customer. Yeah, that's hard.
So I think, sustainability has become such a big buzzword, and it's so general in many ways. You ask 10 people, you get 10 different definitions. You actually probably get 15 different definitions. So let's dig down a little bit. Let's talk about, biodegradable. That's a new buzzword that's picking up a lot in the fashion community. At Bolt Threads, David, what are you doing to address this sustainable solution or the sustainable solution to waste? How are you approaching waste?
Yeah, biodegradable has become, it's an overwhelming buzzword to even unpack, because for most people, if you even just look at your home, you have your trash, you have your recycling, you have your compost, and we can barely keep that straight just in our own homes. What is recyclable? What is not? What is compost? What is not? What is okay to throw in the trash? Let alone once you dig into the terminology used in the materials and the apparel space in terms of like oxo-biodegradable, industrially compostable, home compostable. And when you start thinking about these challenges in terms of how do you deliver material to people on a global scale, and everybody has access to different infrastructures, different services in their municipalities, everybody has to face a different challenge as to how do they get the most out of their garment, how do they have the least environmental impact. And biodegradability, the idea of making something that goes back into the earth, that bacteria can grow on, that plants and animals can feed on, is near and dear to my heart as I look at the world like an ecosystem. I don't believe in designing something that lasts forever. But in terms of how to most effectively address that challenge that I was referring to, where everybody has a different mechanisms by which they deal with waste, we do work on making our materials, specifically since we're so focused on scaling Milo, ultimately have the least impact at the end of life, but also just making durable, long-lasting materials. Reduce, reuse, recycle is in that order. So I think reduce, reuse, recycle, biodegrade is probably the right order of operations for that phrasing. So hopefully people can, and I'm hoping that to the previous question coming out of this, get more out of their garments, hand more garments down, find recycling solutions. But in the long term, these things should be able to biodegrade in landfills, in oceans, and all the areas that we're trying to investigate how to make sure our materials don't just persist and become pollutants.
Or end up inside of you.
Yeah, or end up being inside of you, exactly. Ultimately, pollutants in your own body. They go from out of your body to into your body.
Which is crazy to think about that, nowadays 60% of our fashion is now plastics that shed and end up inside of us, all just so we can spend $5 or $10 less on something.
Yeah.
So Bert, piggybacking off of that question, you recently announced that you're working to make jeans from 100% post-consumer recycled cotton.
Yeah.
From a science and innovation perspective, can you share why this is a challenge for the jeanswear industry, and what steps are you putting into place to overcome the hurdles that exist?
So first of all, you have to try to create a monostream of material. We like to create a monostream of cotton. That's already hard because people like to have their elastan in it and everything. So that's trouble number one. Secondly, post-consumer waste is not like a real beautiful monostream of material. It's easier to work with your cutting losses and things like that. Thirdly, if you start mixing materials, if you have a 20% polyester in your cotton, forget about it. So that's already hard. So you have to, your stream in has to become mono. And secondly, what we do now is we mechanically recycle our cotton in Valencia in Spain. And that's up to a certain level possible. But you can imagine making the threads the fibers more shorter. There's an end to this. So the maximum we have now is like 40%, and that's already like really far. And you have to keep up your strength and everything. So the other part, now people are mixing it with polyester, which of course we don't want to do, but you can also now chemically or molecularly recycle cotton. And that's under work now. People are doing this. Again, here it's also easier to use pre-consumer waste, but we are trying to do it with post-consumer waste. We have the first 60 kilos ready now, with together with Saxion, and other companies are working on this. And we think that the both combined can make another jeans yarn again, where you have, say, half chemically recycled and half mechanically recycled cotton, where you can then make a beautiful yarn and make it into denim again. So that's the trick. It's on laboratory done, but now we have to scale up, and that's the hard part.
Yeah, I think a lot of people that are outside of the denim industry don't realize how resource intensive the washing and the finishing processes can be.
Yes.
James, how are you addressing this at Outland?
Well, look, I'm relatively new to the denim industry, really, and it was a rude awakening for me to start to learn, just how resource intensive the finishing processing was of the product and the washing. And so, for us, it became really clear that we needed to invest in the equipment, best technology available to be able to reduce the impact of this part of the process. And our brand is quite unique in that we do own our own manufacturing facilities, and that gave us, I guess, the ability to be able to invest heavily into that kind of equipment. And so it starts with a laser, which is, most people are aware of now, but just being able to remove some of the processing and remove any water that's used in any of those processes. And then moving on to e-flow technology and using nanobubbles to mist no non-harmful chemicals over our products rather than submerging in thousands of liters of water. And then we go on to ozone, where you replace the heavy bleaching that's done. And so just those three technologies alone, but then how we reuse water, how we clean our water to be able to make it useful again, is the next part of the process. And I think, we should never get to a place where we feel like we've made it. We've got the best technology. When we talk about fibers in particular, recycled is fantastic, and it's amazing that Bert and his team are working on being able to improve this process, because right now that is a process that most certainly isn't at a place where it's really scalable based on the quality issues that come with using recycled. And then if we talk about plastics in product as well, and the recovery of a product, and so therefore by using a recycled polyester or plastic in your product, and it doesn't have the recovery, therefore the post after somebody's purchased the product is washing more regularly, and therefore the energy consumption and the microplastics, 500,000 tons every, I can't remember exactly how often, is going out into the ocean, so we're doing things like collecting water bottles and turning them into our plastics, and then we just turn them into microplastics that go out in the ocean, like I think I heard someone say before, and then it ends up on the inside of our body, so there's some crazy stuff going on. This is part of the greenwashing process. And so, one of the challenges as a brand is that you're not forced into using some of these technologies because there's demand for it, when that it's a flawed process, and it's never going to be a process which is positive. So for us, it's been very much about trying to have that long-term view of how do we address these things. And if we talk about textile waste, we've been working on technology for a number of years now that could address this issue. Our goal would be that every time someone buys a product from us, they know that they're leaving the world and the people in it in a better position as a result of purchasing than if they hadn't. And so that's a big goal, which means that we need to stay focused on things that really do work versus things that are just getting a lot of attention.
Jordan, you're pretty well traveled. I mean, you go all over the world researching, for your denim brand. Where are you seeing the most sustainable innovations coming from for the jeanswear industry?
Right now I'm seeing a lot from Turkey and Pakistan, and as well as Italy. It really it's defining the places that really have a vertical infrastructure. Those are usually the areas that have the most success. However, we have to think of this whole cycle of products and producing supply chain in a circular format. There is actually no such thing as waste. Waste is a word that was made up to devalue something that actually had use. And technically, every piece of trash that we have doesn't need to be thrown away in that place people call away, which doesn't actually exist. That's just digging a hole and putting it in the ground. We should be reusing everything. So everything that gets left over in the process, you have to be able to figure out, do I have infrastructure with my current supply chain to be able to circulate that back into it? I ended up in Turkey because first things first, you have to find vendors, factories, suppliers, mills, farmers, people that are A, willing to be transparent, B, have certification, and C, are passionate about innovation. Bert, I'm sure you probably know the process of trying to find people to work with you to use recycled cotton is difficult. It's like telling them to use, something extremely bad. Like I remember trying to go to Japan and ask people, do you have recycled cotton? It's like saying a bad word to them. They're like, oh, no. Japanese have a very high quality. They would never want to use trash cotton. And that's what recycled cotton is to a lot of people, because it is shorter staple yarns. But that doesn't mean that you can't use it. It does mean that you can't use it in the same way as you would regular cotton. So you have to find people that are willing to find new ways. And that to me was Turkey, because I was able to find people that were recycling post-industrial waste scraps, which was our cutting scraps from our factory that was cutting and sewing. We were able to take the spinning scraps from our spinning facility to also blend that together. And we're also even able to take any leftover jeans from post-consumer and blend that in as well. However, the best process for using mechanical recycled cotton wasn't actually using post-consumer. And that's when I kind of partnered up with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. We all started working on the guidelines for creating a sort of jeans redesign project. And I started working with a company in Sweden called RenewCell to help recycle anything that had any plastic-based fibers, polyurethane or polyester, that was 2% or less. And this kind of gave us the capability to be able to have a supply stream that was very close, because where Turkey was, we had organic cotton, we had factories that had all the machinery that, for instance, had all the e-flow technology that was being talked about previously. We had mills that had all the technology for dyeing and water recycling, and also mechanical recycled cotton, all that within one country. And then nearby you have Austria, which supplies the lensing materials that we use, Refibra and Tencel. And then we have, in Sweden, we had RenewCell. And this kind of creates a very short supply chain, which means we're not shipping stuff all around the world. And you have to think about the carbon emissions on all that. And so when thinking about the best form of places in the world with innovation, you have to think about the whole extent of that circular product. When you make it from the start of the fibers all the way to the end of the product, and then how are you going to get that product back into being a new product after the consumers are done wearing it?
So this is a question I always have, because all this sounds great, but at the end of the day, we're in the fashion business, right? We're in the denim business. It's a business, so we have to make money. So when companies come out and say, we even hear that Patagonia, they had a great campaign, don't buy my product, or you hear companies say we don't need as much consumption. And there are companies that are trying to bring back the product, recycle, or reuse it. But economically speaking, what drives this economy is consumption. Like you talk about fast fashion, it's that constant consumption of product, new. So how do you balance a truly sustainable industry and at the same time drive profit and drive growth? I know it's a complicated question, but
Extremely complicated.
I think circularity would be the answer, though. It's like what Bert was talking about, how he's trying to make jeans that then he can turn into new jeans afterwards. And that goes back to the renewable resources. The less plastics you put inside of your products, the more recyclable they are. And even the products that are made of plastics, there is a place for plastics in fashion with technical products, snowboard jackets, rain jackets, a lot of emergency gears and things like that. But also, once again, it's to create ways to where they don't fiber shed. The factories that produce them create filtration systems and water treatment plants that prevent them from polluting the waters with microplastics. And all the way down the stream, you have to think about each individual impact at each individual place to create both profitability, but also a scalable, safe manufacturing cycle that continuously reuses the products that you've already made, because there's no point in getting more if you already have it exist, especially when people have, I mean, come on, Eddie, how many jeans do you have that you probably only circulate 3 or 4 pairs of jeans at most? You probably have way more that are sitting there you haven't used. Am I correct?
I can start my own department store based on my closet.
Exactly. And I think a lot of people are like that. So it's like, if we start thinking about more, you know, less is more, we have so many things left around that can be turned into new things. It's like one human's trash is another human's treasure mentality.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why we invented the Lisa the jeans concept. It also has to do with the mindset of consumers, saying, do you need to be the owner of something, or is the performance of a product good enough? And if you go wild on that, then it's very easy to become circular, because it's a very normal thing to do. And once we get there as a society, we are on the winning hand. Exactly like you say, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation is a big fan of that, and we're also working with them. And Ellen MacArthur says it right. You know, there is no waste. There's not something as waste. And if you make it circular, you can keep on doing it for ages. So it's also the reason why we are a B Corp. It means as a company, our highest aim is not to make as much as possible money for the owners. Okay, we want to make money. We want to pay ourselves. We want to be sustainable in a way that we are also next year. But there's a limit to that. You know, if you can live and you can make your company, like Patagonia is showing very much, that's good enough. Do you have to have $85 billion on your bank account, like Mr. Zara has? I don't need that kind of money. I can do it less. And if you are the one if you're the first one to cancel your orders when a pandemic breaks out and you've got 4 million people walking home in Bangladesh, is that a world you want to live in? I don't want to live in that. I've got 3 kids and I don't want to give this on to them. So there's more than money alone. Of course, we want to make money. We're all running companies. We have to pay the people that work for us. We have to give them a salary, but that's good enough. There's a moment when you can say, I'm okay with this. It's good. So that's why we invented this circular model. And that's why we are proud of it. We're proud of being a B Corp. A B Corp means also that you write down in the statutes of your company that you want to make money, you want to be a company, but you don't want to do it against humanity or against the earth or anything. You don't want to harm anything. And that's
Isn't it ironic though? Isn't it ironic though, Bert? And this is not, I'm not calling out Inditex in this, because actually Inditex has a lot of initiatives in place around sustainability and fair practices. So we can argue the pros and cons of every company, but I think I guess I was getting more at is consumers have become very vocal about what they want, but several of you guys have said consumers ultimately vote with their wallet. So some of the most successful companies out there are not practicing the most sustainable practices. So that's counterintuitive to what consumers are really saying. So consumers have to step up too. And I also think, you know, part of the issue is that the consumers don't want to pay, the wholesalers or brands don't want to pay, and the factories don't want to pay.
Yeah.
If we change our sourcing model a little bit, there's too much working capital tied up in the supply chain. These 6 months of placing 100,000 units of X, and if we could create a new system where there's shorter runs, there's more working capital, less markdown, and there's less leverage, people will have more money to spend on these things. And when you do speak to factories, they do say over 5 to 7 years, they do start seeing a return on their investment. So it's not all for naught from a financial standpoint either.
No, true. It also has to do in the way you build your company. We've decided to only use 5 materials. They are on stock in our factory in Tunisia, and we can react on the pool of the market. So we have invented the word seasonless that Gucci took over now, which I'm very happy with, because that's one of the aims of our company, saying we want to do 2 things: grow ourselves, but also show the denim world that you can do things normally. And when people are picking up your words, that's really nice. So seasonless means, you know, we make beautiful jeans and we think they're nice, and we think they're still nice in 6 months. And of course we have to adapt and we have to follow the trends and everything. But if we use only 5 materials and we've got 1,000 SKUs, and I can within 2 or 3 weeks readapt my stock, refill my stock, then there's no capital involved. Right. And it's also a way of giving my supplier a very equal line of production throughout the year instead of giving him promotions and he has to work 1 week, 24 hours a day to get my promotion going. And then the other 3 weeks, I don't give him any work. No, we want to be able to give a stream of work all year round. And then those people that work in that factory are happy also. They can come at 9 o'clock and 5 o'clock, go home and have a normal life. And that's also, there's many little steps that you can do to make things better and still earn money.
Yeah, I think that this pandemic has not exposed just the need for sustainability, but also the need for a complete recollaboration of the supply chain in general, because it's very broken, and you could just see the financial strain that the companies had in the best of times. It's not going to work.
Yeah, one thing on that, we've done this leasing concept now for 8 years, and people have been laughing at us, and it's a little bit crazy. Also, I agree, but I must say now we call it luck with an accident. At the moment, in this time of year with this pandemic, we have a constant flow of cash flow because of these leasers. They pay us every month $750. We got about 3,000 leasers. And I have suddenly this flow of money still coming around in my company, and I can survive by it. So it's not intended, but somehow this also helped us through this few difficult times.
Right.
I like a lot.
My hope is that coming out of this, we're going to see the more well-capitalized brands willing to invest more under the demand of consumers for sustainability, willing to invest more in and have more patience with innovation. That's been, one of the big challenges we have in trying to introduce new materials is that people have become so accustomed to, I'm going to go to a trade show, I'm going to see a new material, I'm going to buy it in bulk, and it's already going to be as cheap as everything else. Whether that new material is a recycled material, because recycled materials, until we have the infrastructure to actually do it at scale, are going to be more expensive. You need, unless the waste is so dirt cheap, but you need to sort it and recycle it. These things benefit from the economies of scale. And we as companies developing these new innovations, whether it's a manufacturing innovation, a material innovation, a recycling innovation, need people to be patient and help us along that journey, whether it's paying higher costs earlier, whether it's investment, whatever that takes, but we need a participation. Otherwise, we can't design materials that meet the customer's demands. We can't get the capital to scale. We're reliant on venture capital or angel dollars, or we can't scale to deliver in any meaningful means, or we get stuck in a very small niche business. So the hope for us here is, with Gen Z coming out of this, really so heavily focused on sustainability, maybe that puts more pressure on innovations to be cost comparable sooner, but hopefully we find more partnerships with major brands who are willing to help us get there, understanding it can be a 2, 5, 10-year timeline, which can also be accelerated if people are willing to work hand in hand on that.
That's my concern, is that, is everyone, because they've had so much financial problems and so much burden over the past and I don't think this is going away for the next 12 to 18 months. Demand's going to be down no matter how you look at it. Are they going to, cut CapEx investments? They're going to stop R&D? Are they going to say no in an effort to differentiate ourselves and really try to, be one of the few that survive this? Are they going to invest? And I think that's just going to be very interesting. And I think you're right. It often is the smaller brands that start this trend. But again, I was reading this study that sometimes the brands, the top 25%, end up being the bottom 25%. The bottom 25% end up being the top 25%. In the end, I mean, my stats may be a little bit off, but you get the idea, is that I think a lot of these companies that are trying to do the same thing better fail. You have to do the same thing differently.
Right.
And I think it's when you do look at a smaller brand, I'm sure, Jordan or James or Bert, when you guys are looking at 1,000 pieces and saying it's an extra 10 cents, it's not a huge burden. But if someone's sitting in the boardroom and saying we got 1 billion units, that 10 cents, whoa, that's a big dividend check. And that's like what you're saying, Bert. When you start thinking like that, you're losing focus on the ultimate goal of what implementing sustainability is. So I have one last question, and I know we're out of time, but the purpose of this was really innovation in material sciences. And I really want to touch upon this because, when you go to Asia and certain countries, everyone was wearing masks and things long before COVID. They came out of SARS and they realized this is part of their everyday life. Now there's a lot of conversations that we will be wearing masks and PPE, for the foreseeable future. And maybe it'll even be part of the everyday culture. But you guys foresee, from a material innovation perspective, that it's just not going to be a mask that we have to wear or a glove. Do you think that the garments we have, someone's going to want to go to the gym and wear some woman's going to want a yoga pant that has some antimicrobial characteristics, or in jeans? Or how do you think the garments we wear overall are going to be impacted by COVID, and what type of innovations do you think we'll see?
My hope with that is really on just in terms of not innovation, trend setting, that because I still remember 10 years ago going to Japan for the first time and seeing people in masks walking around. I said to my Japanese friend, why are they masked? I said, oh, because they think they might be sick and they don't want to spread it to people. Utterly blew my mind. Why aren't we all doing that? So I hope there's a certain trend that, masks, when you think, out of concern for others, when you think you might be contagious, become appealing, desirable, cool, whatever the design is. And I know it was going that direction with just carbon pollution. People were starting to work on that. I don't know. In terms of, I've seen a lot of antiviral technologies being developed. I don't know that it's going to make a difference if it's on your gym wear. Really, I see the benefit being, the coatings of the gym equipment itself, really in the industrial sector, where it's going to have a good impact on society, where, your airplane seats are antiviral and antimicrobial versus your dress shirt. There might be plenty of niche things like that, but that might stop you from transmitting a virus when you take it off and put it in your washing machine. I just don't know how much of an impact that's actually going to have on the spread of germs versus, say, the seat covers in everybody's Ubers, for example.
Any other thoughts on this?
I mean, I know that the CDC came out with a report that states that the virus doesn't spread as likely on surfaces as it does, through people's mouths. And I think that that's, the sneezing, the coughing. So in my regard, I hope that masks become something kind of like what's happened with this, what they're calling a trikini, where it's like the bikini companies are making bottoms, tops, and then a mask that all goes together. So instead of it being a bikini 2-set, it's now a 3-set. And that sort of mentality, I hope, is what kind of continues into the future, but also with people looking at, using resources of materials that are a little bit more environmentally friendly, because I know that a lot of bikinis are made of plastics. So whether it's recycled plastics or not, it's still the same story. So hopefully in this regard, we continue to look at things more naturally. How do we, like previously said, how do we make sure we don't get other people sick? Because that's what sustainability is. Sustainability is a selflessness. It's a way of looking at what can I do better, not what better can something do for me. And that's so hopefully a mentality that people start to adapt.
James, Bert, any last statements? I know we got about 2 minutes and we got to wrap.
Look, I just think, Eddie, that, sustainability, I just want to drop in there that, it really is thrown around quite loosely. And, it has a social, economic and environmental element to it. And so when we talk about these issues and we talk about recycling and those kinds of initiatives, which are fantastic and need to happen, we also need to consider that 1 in 6 people across the globe work within the fashion space at some level, from farm to being a on the floor retail executive or something. So it's really important that we don't forget the people in our pursuit of sustainability, because the reality is that there's often a neglect on either the environment or the people. And my belief is that we need to address those two things together, as well as economic sustainability, for us to make real, lasting and true impact.
I agree with that.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank everyone for their time. I'd like to thank everyone in the audience for listening. And of course, Jordana and everyone at Fashinnovation for inviting us to take part in this. Take care.
Thank you.